Hey friends, welcome back to my kitchen. Amanda here, Bare Bones Living, and happy week of Thanksgiving. It is Monday before Thanksgiving, and I am trying to get as much done ahead of time, prepared for Thanksgiving. Now, for Thanksgiving, it's just going to be our household and my dad. So I'm not under a whole lot of pressure, but I would still like to enjoy the day, and I don't want to be on my feet doing all the things during the day. I'd like to spend some time with my family, maybe do some activities if it's a nice day. So I want to get as much done as I can beforehand. Done. So what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be making pumpkin pies. I'm going to make at least 2 different pumpkin pies, maybe 3. And what I have done so far is I made pie crusts. And I made the recipe that I followed. I'm still getting into baking and stuff like that, and so I rely heavily on other people's recipes. And I actually used Ruth Ann Zimmerman's recipe for her pie crust. And her recipe makes 3 pie crusts. And so this is what I did yesterday. And I've made my own pie crust before. I just found some random recipe online, and it worked fine. I've also tried Becky at Acre Homestead's pie crust, and that worked out fine too, but it was a little fussy to make. And I started following Ruth Ann Zimmerman with Homesteading with the Zimmermans, and I just really like her kind of no-fuss recipes. And so I gave it a try yesterday, and I made 3 pie crusts, and I made 3 quiches out of it, and we ate one that morning, and I really liked it, and I really liked her recipe. And in that first batch I used, and it's really simple, it's just flour, baking soda, salt, and fat, and that can be anything from butter, oil, or lard. And I don't render my own lard or anything like that, but I do save off fat when I cook my meat. I save my bacon drippings, I save my poultry drippings, I save all that stuff. And so I have like pickle jars full of bacon grease and other pan drippings in my refrigerator. So that's what I use. I use the bacon grease. It's mostly bacon grease. That's what I use for cooking almost all of my food, is I use the bacon grease or pan drippings that I have saved. And I save my oils for other things. And I loved how that pie crust turned out. It was so flaky, it was delicious. And it, like, the consistency of it was really easy to work with. Now this batch that I have here, I don't often strain my bacon grease. If my husband is making it, he never strains the bacon grease, but it doesn't really bother us any most of the time. But when I'm making like a pie crust, I don't want to have like bits of bacon necessarily it's great in like a savory pie or whatever, but not something I really want in my pumpkin pie. So I used all of like the clean bacon grease that I could kind of work out of my pickle jar when I made my first batch. And I was like, you know what, I have palm fruit shortening, why don't I try that in this next batch and see how that works out, because I don't really use it very often, and it's just kind of taking up space in my pantry. And so I used that instead, and it didn't make as nice of a dough. It didn't work out as easily. It was a little crumblier. It didn't hold together as much, and it didn't go, like with the bacon grease, I was able to spread it out the thickness that I wanted, and as wide as I wanted, without it falling apart. It was very easy to work. With the shortening, it was a kind of a struggle. But so these are not as pretty of pie crusts as I made for my quiches. I think I'll stick to just using my leftover fats for making the pie crusts. But nonetheless, I did get it done, and I did this ahead of time, making the pie crusts. And then, like I said, I'm going to be making 2, if not 3. Obviously, I have 3 pies here. I would like to make 3 different pies. I have recipes for 3 different pies. But one of the pies is the Julia Child pumpkin pie that I really want to try. But it's kind of like a fussier recipe, and that I might have to wait until tomorrow to do, just because I think it'll take too much time, and we're already in the afternoon. I'm going to have to go pick up my son from school and get dinner on the table and all this other kind of stuff, so I don't know that I'll get to that one today. But I also roasted up my pumpkin that I grew. I grew lots of pumpkins, and I roasted those up yesterday. And I roasted up 3 different kinds. One pumpkin that was planted by an animal that just kind of popped up in my yard on like the side of my tiny house. I had one rogue squash plant that grew, and I got 2 little pumpkins, you know, kind of like they were actually a pretty good sized pumpkin. So I used one of those, and then I thought I was growing butternut squash, but I just saved seeds from butternut squash that I had bought, and I put multiple seeds in each planting, and one of the plants that came up was a butternut squash, and another one was like this small little pumpkin. So I don't really know what it was, but I cooked that up. And then I believe the other one that I planted was a sweet meat, and I had never grown that before. And I think it's a sweet meat. I'm going to have to go back and check. But that one was my favorite, which is why I need to go back and check. But I have lots of pumpkin here that I've already roasted up, and kind of the name of the game today is see how much I can get done, and let's get her done. So as I mentioned, I'm making at least 2 different pies. One is going to be made with a block of cream cheese, and then the other one is going to be made with mascarpone cheese. And I just happen to have this in my refrigerator, and it's probably been in my refrigerator for too long. So I decided I need to get a recipe that uses this up. But this first one we're going to do is the sour cream pie. Or cream cheese, not sour cream. And so I'm going to whip my room temperature cream cheese for about 5 minutes until it's fluffy. I'm gonna call this done, and I'm gonna add in my 15-ish ounces of pumpkin puree. And then I'm going to mix this together. So that's pretty much mixed together now. I mixed it for a couple of minutes and it's all incorporated. And now I'm going to add a half a cup of butter. Checking to make sure it wasn't too hot. Half a cup of melted butter. And 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. That's probably a little more than 2 teaspoons, but that's okay. And we're just going to mix that up kind of quick here, just to get it incorporated. At this point we have to add our eggs, and I'm going to add 1 egg at a time, mixing in between each egg. It's worth it. The next ingredient that it calls for is powdered sugar, but I don't have enough powdered sugar made for what it asks for. It calls for 3 1/4 cup, anywhere from 2 1/2 to 3 1/4 cup powdered sugar. So I'm gonna make some more. And all powdered sugar is sugar and a thickener, like a cornstarch or an arrowroot. And it's very easy to make, homemade. It's just 1 cup of sugar to 1 tablespoon of thickener. So I'm gonna make 3 cups. Or just under 3 cups apparently. And then I use arrowroot powder. So I'm going to put 3 tablespoons of arrowroot powder in there. And then I'm going to blitz it up in my Vitamix, and powdered sugar we'll have. So here is my powdered sugar that I just made. I'm going to use up what I already had first, and I'm going to add 3 cups of powdered sugar. So I need a teaspoon of cinnamon, a teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice, and a 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt. And then we're going to mix this up, and this pie will be done. So all the ingredients are incorporated, and I'm going to just pour this into one of my pie crusts. So I poured it into this pie dish, and it is almost overflowing, and I still have more in the bottom. And these are all 9-inch pie dishes, so that makes a lot. So I should have initially poured it on this baking sheet, but I forgot. And I'm going to bake this for 15 minutes at 400, and then I'm going to lower it to 350 and bake for another like 40 to 45-ish minutes. And I think this is gonna be the only pie I'm gonna make tonight because we are also butchering our turkey tonight. So I have run out of time for this evening. Hey there again, it's the next day, and this is actually now day 3 of me making pies. The first day I made the crusts. Yesterday I made the cream cheese pumpkin pie, and like I thought, I was only going to have time for this one. I finished this when this was finally done in the oven. It was perfect timing for when Mike got home and we had to go harvest our Thanksgiving turkey, which was such a cool experience. It was such a gratifying experience. It was something that was on our kind of goals for this year, was to grow our own Thanksgiving turkey, and it went super smooth. The only caveat to that was that because it gets so dark so early now, by the time Mike got home, it was already dark. And so we were doing it by flashlight, which was not super fun. It made catching him much easier, but the rest of the process with, lights shining on us and things like that, that wasn't super fun. You'll see here that the turkey is now resting in vinegar water, and it's going to stay like that until we are ready to cook it Thursday morning. I have not yet weighed it, but I know it's going to be more than 11 pounds, like the one that unfortunately passed a couple weeks ago. My guess is somewhere around 14 to 15 pounds. And then our cats enjoyed a nice fresh turkey liver treat last night that they really enjoyed. And our batch of chickens from this year that I call the meat birds, they are enjoying the innards of the turkey, and these will be gone by the end of the day. So then the rest of the day, so that took us until late last night. So then this morning I spent all morning cleaning up the bowls and knives and then the dishes from making the pies last night and our dinner last night. It's a pretty hectic evening with that all combinating with dinner and kids going to bed and things like that. So I do have one pie made, and I'm glad I put it on that baking sheet because it did bubble over. But it turned out really nice. And then, hold on. It did actually have extra. Can I put you down?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I showed you guys I had a lot of extra filling, so I didn't want that to go to waste. So I put it in like a little dish. You can see that as I was kind of holding it with my glove, I dimpled it a little bit, but I cooked it like a souffle, and I'll just put some whipped cream over this, and we might eat this tonight for a little dessert, and then we can get a little taste of what this pumpkin pie is going to taste like. So that's one that is completely done, and I'll make whipped cream and decorate this, but this pie is done. So now I'm gonna make that mascarpone pumpkin pie. So in my mixer I have 8 ounces of room temperature mascarpone, and I'm gonna mix in a 1/4 cup of sugar until smooth. To that I'm going to add 1 egg and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. and mix that in. At this point, I'm supposed to be removing a half a cup of this mascarpone mixture, but I don't think my mascarpone was completely to room temperature. I feel like this should be not so lumpy, but I'm gonna proceed anyway. So I'm gonna take half a cup of that and set it off to the side. And then I'm going to add 3 more eggs. These are some honkin' eggs that are new layers, meat chickens, what I call them, are laying. They're really just still getting into their groove. Also, a half a cup of packed brown sugar, but I make my own brown sugar, so, and I stopped making big portions of it because I just don't use it enough. So I'm just going to put in a half a cup of sugar and a little glug of molasses. I just eyeball it. Then I'm going to put in 2 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice. A little pinch of salt and my pumpkin puree, and we're going to mix that all together. And now we'll mix this up. So you'll see that the mascarpone is not actually like incorporating into my pumpkin puree here. But again, I don't really care. As long as it tastes good. Aesthetics is just a bonus. So then I'm going to add half of this to my pie crust. Alright, so then I'm going to put half of this in my pie crust. And I'm deviating from this recipe that I'm following because she makes a pie crust out of spelt. And she cooks her pie crust before she bakes it, but I'm just cooking it like how I cooked the other pie. So that's about half. Now I'm going to take my mascarpone and put some dollops of my mascarpone in here. Okay. Then I'm going to put the rest of my pie filling on top of that. Alright, so now that I've put the rest of this in and smoothed it out, I'm going to take the rest of my mascarpone and I'm going to dollop it in. Nope, nope. Thank you. And then comes the kind of fun part. I'm just going to take the back of a wooden spoon and I'm going to kind of swirl it up. I think because it's chunky, lumpy, it's not going to really make the pretty swirls I was hoping for. But that's okay. Plus, I don't know how to decorate anything. But there we have it. We'll see how that turns out. And now I'm going to bake it in a 400-degree oven for about 45 minutes. My third and final pie is the Julia Child recipe. And I just was browsing through Pinterest and it popped up and I was like, why not? It's a Julia Child recipe. It's got to be good. And this is the only recipe that I am following to the T. I'm not subbing spices for my, my homemade pumpkin pie spice. But what I am doing is I am halving it because her recipe makes 2 pies, so I'm halving it. And I actually got the Pinterest article that I saw was actually a review of this recipe, and that reviewer said it was very easy to half it, but then as I was reading the directions, her recipe calls for 4 eggs separated, so taking out the egg whites, separating the egg whites from the egg yolks. But then it has you whipping 3 egg whites and reserving 1 of the egg whites to mix in with the pumpkin mixture. So that's going to be a little off for me because I'm using 2 eggs. So I'm going to try just to reserve maybe just a little smidgen. But other than that, I'm following this to a T just because I want to see what it's like. And see if her recipes are really all the hype that they're worth. I've never had a Julia Child recipe, but why not try? So this is by far the fussiest recipe. There's a lot of different little steps, and it's taken me pretty much the entire time that this mascarpone pie has been cooking, which in another minute, I cooked it for 45 minutes. It's not quite there yet, so I added another 3 minutes or 5 minutes and it's almost done. So it's taken me about an hour to get all the components ready to use, plus putting my kids, feeding them and putting them to take a nap. So I think I'm ready to get this pie going. So I did just take this out. I think that it's ready. It's still a little jiggly, but it looks like it's pretty done to me. It's coming out actually a little lighter in the camera, but the top is pretty dark. The crust looks done, and I think it'll be just fine. So it took about 50 minutes. And you can kind of see there's a little bit of a design, but not much. Alright, so this part is actually super easy. I'm just going to mix up the pumpkin mixture. So I have 15 ounces of pumpkin puree. I'm gonna do a half a cup of white sugar and a half a cup of brown sugar, but since I don't have that, I'll just do my little mix there. Some bourbon. I'm gonna do a tablespoon and a half of bourbon. A tablespoon and a half of molasses. So I have to add more molasses. So I think this is going to be, the other two pies had cream in them to make them rich. This is going to be rich in a different way. And then the spices, I need a teaspoon and a half of cinnamon and a teaspoon and a half of ginger. And then 1/8 of a teaspoon of nutmeg and clove. I'm also going to add in, at this point, my 2 yolks. A 1/2 cup of cream. And about a little over 1/3 of a cup of milk. And I'm going to mix this all together. So that's a lot of ingredients, but it's cool that I get to mix all that together, and this is my pumpkin mixture. And it is quite a dark, rich color. That is some dark pumpkin. Okay, so I was mistaken. I don't hold back 1 egg white. It was just once I beat them, I only beat 1/4 of it into the pumpkin mixture, and then I fold the rest of it in. So I just misread it, which makes me feel a lot better. So I'm gonna beat this, but I'm not gonna beat it to stiff peaks yet. And okay, that's foamy. And then I'm gonna add a pinch of salt. And a tablespoon of sugar. And now I'm going to whip it to stiff peaks. I'm going to say that's good enough. Good Lord. We're like right there. That's making a ton of noise as my kids are falling asleep. I got a couple little peaks there, right? So now I'm going to take 1/4 of this mixture-ish. We're going to say that was 1/4. And beat it into this pumpkin mixture. And then I'm going to fold the rest of it, of those eggs, the egg whites, in. Now I don't blend my pumpkin puree, so you'll notice that it's very stringy. That does not bother me, and when I'm making my pumpkin puree, that's one less thing that I have to clean. So I'm going to bring down the sides, and then I'm going to fold the rest of these egg whites in. And I never really know what they mean by folding it in. I try to be gentle, but I'm not a pastry chef. Sure, there's probably a good technique. Avoiding a camera is probably not the best technique. Don't have the best angle on this, but I'm gonna call that good because it's gonna also mix as I'm pouring it in. My third pie crust, and I'm gonna just pour it in there. And then we're gonna bake this in a 450-degree oven for 10 to 15 minutes until it gets golden, and then we're gonna reduce it to 375 for another 25 to 30 minutes. So here we have 3 pumpkin pies made 3 different ways: the cream cheese, the mascarpone, and the Julia Child pumpkin pie. Each one of them has a degree of cracking, even though I followed all the directions and vented the stove and, you know, tried to prevent cracking, whatever. I don't know which one we're going to have for Thanksgiving, but look at how dark this Julia Child pie is. And it smells so good. I think this mascarpone pie smelled the best cooking. And this one smelled delicious too, but I just don't know which one we're gonna have on Thanksgiving. And it's never a bad idea to have pies ready-made during the holidays. I'm thinking I'm gonna save the Julia Child for Christmas. We have a lot of family coming to visit us for the Christmas holiday, so at different times, so we'll have plenty of opportunities to be eating pies. But I'm super happy that I got these done, and now I need to get them all covered up, chilled, and then I'm going to freeze the ones that I do not need for Thanksgiving. But the final thing that I need to do today to prepare for Thanksgiving is I need to make cranberry sauce. And that is a fairly easy recipe, but it is taking up space in my refrigerator. something I can easily make ahead of time, and I'm going to be making a lot more than I actually need for just Thanksgiving. And I'm going to be canning it. And of course, the theme of today is making multiple different recipes. So I'm making 2 different cranberry sauces. So let's get going on that. Both of them are, I don't know, fairly, I guess, basic cranberry sauce recipes. The one is going to just be like a classic. They're both going to be jellied cranberry sauce because no one in this house is keen on textures. So we want that smooth, no chunks. I live with a bunch of little boys, and even my big boy is picky. So we're gonna have jellied cranberry sauce. So it's just cranberries, sugar, water, orange juice, and orange zest. And then the other one is gonna have all that, but with brown sugar and a little bit of bourbon added as a fun adult version, and something that I can appreciate. Yeah. With a little bit of extra flavor, a little bit of zip, that even if I'm the only one that eats it, it makes me happy. So I'm gonna get going on that one. I have 2 pots. I have 2 bags in each. The one pot, the black pot, has a 12 ounce bag and an 8 ounce bag, and the silver one has 2 12-ounce bags. The silver one I'm going to do the classic cranberry sauce, and the black one I'm going to do the brown sugar bourbon cranberry sauce. Okay, so I split my orange zest between the 2. I only have enough orange juice currently for 1, so I'm just going to make the bourbon one first. So that was 3/4 of a cup of orange juice and 3/4 of a cup of water. And I'm going to, and the bourbon. Silly me. And it says 1 to 3 tablespoons of bourbon. So I'm going to do 2. And we'll see how that tastes. And I'm just going to start cooking this until these start popping. And Mike is on his way home with more orange juice. So then I can start the other one. My baby is having a hard time not being held by mommy right now. Alright, so this has been cooking for about 10 minutes, and most of them are popped open. So I'm going to turn off the heat, and I'm going to use an immersion blender to blend this up and make it easier to put through a sieve. Now I'm going to run this through my sieve. As good as I can. After I ran all of this through the sieve, I'm going to put it back on a medium heat, and I'm going to do 2/3 of white sugar, 1.5 cups of brown sugar,
That was probably a little bit too much. Oh well. And I'm going to bring this to a boil and get it to gel. And then this will be ready to jar up. And my other cranberry sauce, I'm going to basically make the same, or I already made actually. And with that, I did the cranberries. I did half white sugar. I did 2 cups of sugar again, but 1 cup of white sugar and 1 cup of brown sugar. And I put all the ingredients in at the very beginning and I gelled it and I put it through the sieve. Or I blended it up too and then I put it through the sieve. But I feel like putting it through the sieve after it had already gelled was harder. It was more work to manually work it through. It took longer. So I think, and so the only difference really between the 2 cranberry sauces is this one is not exactly half and half white sugar to brown sugar. And it has the addition of the bourbon, but everything else is the same. So I'm going to bring this to a gel point. I'm going to bring it to a boil. And then I'll check it for its gel. And then I'll jar this up. And I tasted this before I put the sugar in, and it tasted delicious. I guess I could just taste it now. That is, like I said, I have the other cranberry sauce already made, and that tastes really good, but this sauce has such a different flavor to it. It's so much deeper of a flavor. It does have more brown sugar to it than white sugar, and then it has just that little flavoring of the bourbon. It does seem sweeter, actually. But then again, this was 2 cups of sugar, and I have 4 ounces less of cranberries, so that might also play a part in it too. But this is delicious. Alright, I think I'm about ready to call this. So now I have enough cranberry sauce to either last me 4 Thanksgivings or at least 4 meals, I should say, and the 3 pumpkin pies. And I'm super excited to have these completed in preparation for this Thanksgiving. Even though it's taken me a couple of days to do this, if I would have had to do this on Thanksgiving, it just would not have ever happened. This one, these are the 2 that the non-bourbon
cranberry sauces, and then these are the 2 bourbon cranberry sauces. I ended up getting 2 full pints of the bourbon, which I was actually pretty surprised about since I had less of the berries, but nonetheless, so I'm really excited about that. And I don't know if you can see it right now, but this sauce is a lot darker than this sauce is jarred up too. So it's pretty easy to identify the difference between them. Both look gorgeous though. Like I said, I think we're gonna have probably this mascarpone pie for Thanksgiving, and we'll freeze these other 2 pies. I have this, what I'm calling plain cranberry sauce, in the refrigerator for this Thanksgiving. It is almost totally, oh, it's totally gelled. And it smells wonderful. So we'll have this for Thanksgiving, and the rest will go for future use. I know that this was a pretty lengthy video, and if you've made it to this point, I greatly appreciate that you have stuck it out and stayed with us. And because of that, I'm going to offer the people that made it to the end of the video a little extra bonus. So in the comments below, guess the weight of the turkey that we harvested, and the person who gets the closest to the actual weight, I will send you one of my new lip balms, and you get to choose the flavor. So in the comments below, if you've made it this far, put your guess to how much our turkey ended up weighing. I have not weighed it yet. I did tell you how much I thought about it would weigh. And whoever gets the closest, and we're not doing like the Price is Right rules or whatever, it's just whoever is closest, I'll send you some lip balm. So I want to thank you again for sticking around for this video and hanging out with me, and we will catch you on the next one. Thank you guys for stopping by today and joining in on our journey here at Bare Bones Living. We'll catch you on the next one.